It seems like you're breaking down from the book. Your body is falling apart.
I was falling apart. Suffering was an actual skill. Your ability to suffer.
I would maybe define discipline as any time you're doing a thing that maybe is painful or difficult or not gratifying in the short term, but has benefits over the long term.
Taylor Swift I find really interesting because I actually used her as an exemplary soul, or a person who is really in touch with her soul.
How do I know that you're making progress in this philosophy? He says, you're having fewer arguments.
If you're applying persuasion to yourself, you're removing discipline altogether. I gotta tell you that I deliberately avoided reading The Obstacle is the Way until after the book was published because I didn't want it to influence me.
Really?
And boy, am I glad I didn't, because there's so much in common. I mean, we're covering the same things.
Yeah. I mean, you talk a lot about the Stoics in here. It was funny. I was just at the Stoa Pokile in Athens earlier this month.
I've been there.
It's not much. It's just a hole in the ground.
No.
It's kind of crazy to think that, like, I mean, they also just built like a railroad through the middle of it.
Yeah.
And like they did, obviously, like we sometimes lament our destruction of like historical things in America, and it's like at least we didn't build a railway through the agora.
Yeah, of course we never had an agora.
That's true. That's true.
And there is a painted stoa nearby that you.
That's a different one, but
it is
yes.
a different one.
Yes.
Yeah, but you can get a sense of the colonnades and strolling through.
Yeah. Yeah, and you go, oh, this would be a good place to hang out and talk philosophy. I get it.
Yeah, absolutely. They didn't have good coffee. Other than that,
I was curious, like, what you think. Well, so why did you think that the obstacle is the way would be a problem? You thought that the kind of mental I think your book is kind of about the mental jujitsu we have to do to make us do things we don't want to do, or see things that we might first be inclined to see as negative as actually positive. So I guess they're similar in that sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's different in this sense that we're not talking philosophy in my book.
Yeah.
We're talking rhetoric.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of persuasion, of reframing, of changing your mood, your attitude toward things, and your willingness to do something or stop doing it. So it's a little bit different from living a life of virtue, of doing the right thing. Perseverance isn't really a big part of rhetoric. It's more about timing, kairos as they call it. So yeah, it's different in that sense. The reason why I didn't read your book is I was careful not to read any modern book because I wanted to go back to this. It's clear you do. Yeah. Like read the classics, then have conversations, then read the other books and realize, how good the other people are and how much you miss. Yeah,
and you sort of realize when you're reading the modern books that what you're getting is essentially a rehashing of the ancient stuff, which if you're familiar with is not as exciting. Like some of the sort of books about philosophy that I read, I'm glad I read them when I was younger before I'd read some of the philosophy, because then like you're getting these snippets for the first time. It's very exciting. It's like when you've read a decent chunk of scientific research and then you read the sort of pop science books, you're like, oh, I already know all these studies. The book's not as interesting.
Yeah.
And so, this line between philosophy and rhetoric is interesting. And I'm thinking one of the pushes and pulls in Marcus Aurelius' life is these two competing teachers. He has Fronto, his rhetoric teacher, and Rusticus, his philosophy teacher. And you can tell they're both kind of vying to be the number one influence in his life. And then obviously when he goes into politics, probably the rhetoric becomes more important than the philosophy. But where do you feel like the distinction between those two is?
That is such a great example.
Yeah.
That's like, the angel and the devil on his shoulders.
Yes.
The rhetoric being the devil.
Yeah.
So Aristotle defined rhetoric better than anybody and pretty much before anybody did it well. And so he defined rhetoric as distinct from philosophy in the sense that deliberative rhetoric, which is he hoped was the rhetoric of politics, is the rhetoric of choice and decisions, of talking about the future. Now, Aristotle realized that everything is contingent. There is no rule book that can apply to everything. You've written about this. Yeah. So he decided that there needed to be the specific skills that he picked up from the sophists, the wise ones, as they called themselves, who taught the art of manipulation.
Yeah.
And so the idea of persuading people who disagree that in a way that would lead to better choices or public decisions or consensus, that's distinct from philosophy, which was a pursuit of a truth, preferably a single truth. Both are equally valid, but if you're going into politics, you're going to be a Roman emperor. You kind of want the manipulative part.
Well, it makes me think what's so interesting about philosophy today and why it probably feels inaccessible or irrelevant to most people is a failure of rhetoric, right? The ability to take the truth or the idea and make it compelling or interesting to people, or to make it practical to people. This is really where philosophy has fallen short. And it's almost like deliberate, like philosophy is deliberately obscure and inaccessible rather than practical. And the funny thing is, when you write books like yours or mine, where you make philosophy or these ideas accessible, the sort of the epithet for it is that it's just a self-help book, as if that's not a good thing, right? Like self-help is something you kind of say with a sneer, like self-help is here and philosophy or art or literature is up here.
Yeah, I was troubled by the very idea of writing a self-help book. Yeah. But guess what? I mean, I was trying to help myself.
Sure.
I was writing about how to apply rhetoric to help myself. I had no choice. It had to be a self-help book. Although in the book, I deny that it's a self-help book.
Right.
Very rhetorical.
Because you don't want to be tarred with that with that pejorative. Like there's something about, it's like a book that helps people. I don't want to be doing that. Yeah. Like it seems weird that's what you don't want, but just because of where it sort of sits in the market. And then obviously there's grifters and stuff out there that sort of give the genre a bad name. But
yes. Like the sophists.
Yes. But it is like, if you sort of dismiss what the sophists do and all you focus on is the truth or the idea, and then you don't find a way to make it accessible for people, it doesn't work. I mean, like, I just think about, like, even Aristotle, if his most important work didn't have an unpronounceable name, might it itself be as popular as, say, Meditations? Probably. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
like it's like, oh, are you reading Aristotle? What are you reading? Oh, I'm reading Nicomachean Ethics. It's like, oh, let me rush out and buy that, right?
Well, and plus, it's terrible reading.
And it's supposedly written to his son, but it doesn't take any of the form of like, you compare what he's writing to his son with even, I don't know, Seneca's letters, which is the same performative medium, but one is actually reads like letters, and the other reads like a philosophy treatise, and so only basically academics read one and lay people read another.
Yeah, and if you go fast forward a little bit to Lucretius, when he is doing this marvelous poem on Epicureanism, so much fun. I mean, he says it's like putting honey in the dose of wormwood to make a kid drink it.
Yeah.
I mean, he realized that
medicine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, there is the art of, and I guess that's what makes meditation such a remarkable work, is here you have someone who's, on the one hand, eschewing rhetoric. He's not trying to convince you, and yet he's so clearly trained in rhetoric that even his self-talk is better than most performative talk from the other philosophers and writers.
That's such a great way to put it. But you can even see that Plato doing that, hating rhetoric while applying every rhetorical tool to it.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I don't think Fronto Marx Aurelius's rhetoric teacher could read Meditations, a philosophy work, and not go, this is mostly me. His fingerprints are all over it. It's this perfect fusing of the philosophy and the rhetoric. Again, so remarkable that it's self-directed, as you're talking about, the art of self-persuasion. He's trying to convince himself of the ideas over and over and over again.
There's self-help for you. But, not only that, but some of the rhetorical tools he uses, like figures and tropes, are absolutely what he had been taught.
Yes.
Rhetorically.
Yes. These sort of beautiful metaphors and images, the sort of repetition of stuff.
The rhythm.
Yes. And then to go like, here you have this guy who's very busy writing in Greek, not Latin, to himself, not expecting it to be published. The idea that an average person with even a sub-average education could pick up a translation in their language and be like, I get some of this, is pretty remarkable. You do not have to be a trained classicist. You do not have to, you don't have to read the preceding works or the following work. Like, you can just pick it up, know nothing about philosophy, know nothing about Stoicism, and go, oh, there's stuff in here for me.
It's funny. I actually live in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah.
and I write out of a cabin in rural New Hampshire, and I have a literal outhouse outside. Yeah. And for years, my bathroom reading has been Marcus Aurelius. Yeah. He wrote the original bathroom book.
Because it's a book that you pick up and take little chunks of. You don't read it from cover to cover. It's a collection of epigrams and anecdotes and little insights. It's not. If you're going through Plato on the toilet, you're like, wait, what did I read last time? Or where? It's not designed to be consumed in snippets.
No, and longer term bathroom reading is someone you're a fan of, Montaigne, and you get the sense, and who is a big fan of Marcus Aurelius, and even had quotations of Seneca painted on the wall. Yeah. Without Marcus Aurelius, I don't think he would have invented the essay. Mm-hmm. Because the essays are sort of long form epigrams.
Yeah, they're ruminations on a theme. It's basically a very extended commonplace book. His essays.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's the idea that the philosopher's job is to explore the self. Right. So often I think philosophy or most philosophy is trying to explain the universe, explain what you should be doing, explain what you need to understand. And I think both Montaigne and Marcus Aurelius are like, I don't have time for that. What do I know? What's wrong with me? What am I struggling with? And it's trying to get to, some flicker of self-awareness.
Yeah. What's interesting about Montaigne is that he talked about assaying himself.
Yes.
Like Barbie, he wondered what was he made of.
Yeah, yes.
And so that because why we call it the essay, because he was assaying himself. So it wasn't a matter of formulation or a sense of how you should live the good life. He basically said, I represent all of humanity. Yeah. And that got me back, when I was thinking about this, to my favorite book of Aristotle, which is On the Soul. Mm-hmm. It's his weirdest book. And I found it the most readable.
Yes.
Partly because I got a sense he was having fun with it. And that's what Aristotle was doing. He was looking inside his own body and wondering, where's my soul?
Yeah.
Is it an organ, or is it something above me, or what's going on with that, and how do I connect with it?
Yes. And you see in him, he is rhetorically a genius. He's also an incredible writer who knows all the tips and tricks of the trade, and he's really good at it. He's just not. He's applying it inwardly with humility, as opposed to the way a demagogue or an expert might do it, which is like, let me tell you what I know. He's saying like, I don't know what I know. Let's find out.
Yeah, which is a great start.
Yes.
If you're truly into your own self-help.
Yeah, I think that's right. So I was curious, what do you think the difference between self-persuasion and self-discipline are? Or does one lead to the other, or how are they related?
I love that question. And I'm going to give you my own personal take on this. Many scholars, and I'm not one, disagree. Okay. But I think that if you're applying persuasion to yourself, you're removing discipline altogether. Now, sooner or later, you impose discipline because it's easy. Mm-hmm. But so this is where Epicureanism, as it evolved directly from Aristotle, differs from the Stoics, which is the sense that they weren't trying to live a virtuous life. They were trying to lead a happy one. Yes. And so you needed a series of steps that involved some good behavior along the way. The difference was, if you're applying the rhetoric to convince your soul that you're worthy of it. You're trying to live up to this higher self, as Aristotle described it. You need to convince this soul that you're doing the right things. Now, in order to do that, you have to apply all the tricks of the manipulative trade to do that, including convincing yourself that whatever goal you're setting is the most amazing thing ever, and then ramp yourself up to it very slowly and easily. The other thing you do in terms of rhetoric is you reframe the very idea of suffering. So you're not trying to time when you're going to suffer or prepare to suffer in any way. You're actually seeing the suffering itself as something very different and even possibly enjoyable. The idea of discipline, in other words, really bothered a lot of the Epicureans, and I have to say it bothers me too. I mean, I've painstakingly put together a bunch of good habits. I turn 70 next month, and I'm feeling better than I've ever had in my life, in part because I've manipulated myself into this probably false belief that I'm younger than I am. So that's not discipline.
You don't feel like you have discipline?
I have habits.
Okay.
And Aristotle, being the inventor of, habit philosophy, got me there.
And you don't think habits are a result of discipline or a form of discipline? Like, I guess I'm failing to see the distinction. I feel like discipline is, this is what I think I should do. Maybe I don't want to do it, but I'm doing it anyway. And whether you're doing it out of habit or you're doing it out of the sort of morning discussion with yourself, it seems like we're getting to the same place.
Spoken like a true Stoic. Now, the difference, I like to use the analogy of flossing. Mm-hmm. I've flossed for many years.
Yeah.
Now, in the beginning, it did seem like something that really sucked.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it in detail, it's kind of gross, painstaking, and that sort of thing. I did it because I was driven to do it. My dating life was falling apart because my gums were bleeding. It was disgusting. So I did it for a very specific goal, and I managed to convince myself that it really wasn't so bad to floss my teeth. Now, I've done it for so many years, it's attached to my identity. This is what Aristotle believed was really important. Yeah. It's just, I'm a flosser. That's all I am.
I'm a woodworker, I'm a flute player, whatever.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of people will say, when it comes to another wonderful skill that doesn't take discipline, except maybe in the beginning, is napping. I'm a champion napper, as every old guy like me should be. And the thing is, a lot of people say to me, oh, I don't nap. And what they're saying is, I am not one who naps.
Right.
Now, if you can change that sense of identity, and you can do it with these manipulative tools of rhetoric to change how you think about yourself, and the soul is one way to do that. It's a little way to divide your daily self from that soul, that Aristotelian soul. If you can do that, it's basically having this conversation with somebody who's not quite you. It's sort of a better version of you. And at that point, you can convince it using all these tools that maybe you are the kind of person who naps after all. And you're not doing it saying, I'm going to lie down and make myself nap. It doesn't work.
But as someone who flosses every day, you don't see that as a little act of discipline? Or you're saying there's no discipline involved because you've convinced yourself that it's part of your identity and now you just do it? I guess I would just argue that that's discipline. Anything you do every day, anything you turn into a habit that's, I guess we could say, positive, is discipline.
But bad habits can teach you what good habits are. So, for example, I have a cocktail every night. I shouldn't. That's bad. And yet, if I don't have the cocktail, that's straying from a habit that I've ingrained in myself. And so the same thing with flossing. I just feel bad if I don't floss. Right. I don't feel as if I should floss. I sort of can't not floss.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess right. If we just say anything you do habitually is discipline, then obviously we're saying you have the discipline to do bad things. I guess I would maybe define discipline as any time you're doing a thing that maybe is painful or difficult or not gratifying in the short term, but has benefits over the long term. That is discipline.
It can be from a stoical standpoint. On the other hand, one of the things I read about my book is that I really needed to work out, and I needed to do a heck of a lot of PT. I had a hip problem. that was very difficult to overcome.
It seems like you're breaking down from the book. Your body is falling apart.
I was falling apart.
Yeah.
I mean, I was also suffering from a severe dose of self-pity in every way. I had a nice career, and people weren't returning my phone calls anymore. I mean, I was in that old guy, privileged white man problem, era of my life. So I needed first of all, in order to not discipline myself, in order to make myself do the things I wanted to do, I had to do two things. And this is pure Aristotle.
Yeah.
One was to set a goal that was a whole lot more interesting than walking again.
Yeah.
I was walking with a bad limp and sometimes not at all. I wanted to be able to run again, which was much more difficult, bigger goal. And, the Stoics talk about that too, as you know. I wanted to be able to run up a mountain in fewer minutes than I was old in years and be the first person over 50 to do it. And this was one of the big challenges.
Where's this mountain, by the way?
It's in New Hampshire.
It sounds amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
You've got to come and visit.
Yeah.
It's one of the most beautiful mountains in the Northeast, but it also happens to be just about the right height and angle for the perfect measure of VO2.
Yeah.
And so Olympians test themselves on this. Now, only a dozen people had ever run their age, which is reaching the top in fewer minutes than their olden years, which is a marvelous fallacy that works great.
Sure.
And so I was told by two physiologists that it was actually physically impossible. Never mind the fact that I couldn't even walk right.
Right.
So, which turned into a trope for me, a hyperbole, which in the Greek, if you translate it, comes from the words meaning above or beyond, hyper, and bully, which is where we get the word ball from. So to throw beyond, this was,
I love that.
I needed something stupid and pointless in order to experiment on myself to see if I could convince myself it was possible. All right, none of that involved discipline. That was sheer fun, like a word nerd kind of fun.
Well, that doesn't involve discipline because you haven't done it yet. You're just the idea of doing it.
Exactly. But that was part of setting myself up. So not doing what I was supposed to be doing was the first step. And Aristotle actually writes about this. I call it the ramp. He doesn't. But, the idea that you begin at such a low angle to the point where you're just almost procrastinating. The very first thing I was doing was setting a goal, a very well-defined goal. Okay, now how am I going to do it? That's planning. The biggest problem I had was time, as we all have. So I decided I would create my own time zone. And, my name is Jay, so I decided to call it J-Light Saving. And again, here's something that's rhetorical, that doesn't involve discipline, which is that if you can make your audience, including your own soul or you, as the case may be, smile or laugh, you're putting yourself into a more persuadable state.
Yeah.
Behaviorists call it cognitive ease. Aristotle calls it receptivity.
Yeah.
So I was making myself receptive just by making myself laugh at this stupid idea of my own time zone. Of course, the problem with that time zone is no one else is in it except my wife, who gets up early. So I did it by waiting, which is a great thing to do if you don't want to discipline yourself. Procrastinate.
Okay.
And every good writer, I'm going to ask you if you do this, is a brilliant procrastinator. Like you're really good at doing things other than writing.
Deciding what day I'm going to start, which is never today. I'm starting this on my birthday.
That's what makes you a successful writer.
Yeah.
So that's part of the ramping process. So I waited until the daylight saving changed in the fall to give, the government granted me an hour of the day. And then the next year I did the same thing. Now, in the meantime, I was really starting to do the PT and the workouts and stuff until finally I spent a year training. Now, one of the things I did was to reframe the very idea of suffering. And it started with this doctor giving me literally hundreds of dextrose, sugar water shots to kind of flood the zone of my nerves. I won't explain why it's gross. But I decided while I was lying there sweating on this table that this was part of my training. And what's more, I wasn't training to run up a mountain yet. I was training to suffer. And, the sophists believed that suffering was an actual skill, your ability to suffer. And so the idea...
Certainly the Stoics would agree with that more than the Epicureans.
They would. Yes, that's true. The Epicureans would do everything they could to avoid suffering. You're absolutely right. But that being said, to me, none of that was discipline at all. There was a desire that came from this wonderful, silly goal. The other thing that I found was I wanted to be prepared for a higher order of failure. And you've written about this, which is this idea that this was literally an impossible goal. Sure. I had to convince myself that it was possible, while at the same time realizing that failure, which would come from obstacles beyond my control, a very Stoical principle, would still put me ahead. Yeah. Like, imagine if I could run again. It wouldn't matter if I ran up this Mount Moosilauke in New Hampshire. Yeah. But I would be able to enjoy myself running. I could ski again, all the delights I used to have.
But so you did all these rhetorical tricks to persuade yourself and to, make it less intimidating and whatever. But at some point you had to both do the training and then do the run. Isn't that discipline?
Well, okay, I'm still procrastinating here. So the very first thing I did was to sit down and read. Okay. So I took my daylight saving hour of the day, which became 4:30 in the morning. Yeah. And I began my training by reading physiology books. Mm-hmm. So, and this is part of changing my identity and getting in touch with my far superior soul, superior to my daily self. Sure. So I was looking at what Aristotle calls my phronesis. I translate it as craft. It's often called practical wisdom. Mm-hmm. Like whether you know what to do, whether you can solve a particular problem, where you have not just the book learning, but the experience. Well, okay, I'd been running. I'd trained in the past, in my youth. But I thought, I want to know exactly what's going on with my body, especially an aging body. So I started reading journals. And none of that was training. Yeah. I was deliberately avoiding doing the actual PT and exercise.
But you did train at some point, right?
Yes. Weeks later, I started doing really easy things like foam rolling, and yoga and stuff. And, actually, the physiology reading was so difficult that I found yoga way easier. So in a way, the ramp kind of, leveled itself a little bit. All right. Then gradually it became like not such a big deal. I was getting bored with yoga, which I hate. Yeah. So I decided to start, the PT I was supposed to be doing, which is painful. I started doing that more because that sure beats yoga. Right. Now, so each step of the way, I was trying to keep the angle of that ramp as short as possible. Yeah. Okay. But still, you're right. There was a degree of discipline, but I wouldn't call it that, because at the moment I started doing that, I would start feeling sorry for myself and thinking, I'm not doing that. I am doing, this is actually kind of fun and interesting. I have my own time zone. I have read all about physiology, and I'm learning all kinds of cool stuff, which is super fun. Yeah. And then on top of that, I'm going to end up at the top of that mountain, even though I was still doing just like basic PT stuff.
What is interesting, because I think we tend to think of discipline as a physical thing, right? So discipline is the running, the lifting weights, the not eating the foods or whatever, doing the flossing. But oftentimes the discipline, I would argue, is in what you're talking about, which is the persuasion and how we think about it and how we frame it. Like, there's a writing rule I love, which is like 2 crappy pages a day. That's the ramp. So if you go, I have to write this book and I have to do it in 2 months, and that's 5,000 perfect words a day, you're going to despair and not do it. But if you just say, hey, I just need to make a small contribution today, I just got to show up, and by dramatically lowering the stakes, or as to use your analogy, the angle of the ramp, then you just do it. And oftentimes you end up doing more than you thought, or you've tricked yourself into thinking that you're not doing it when in fact you are doing it. Because you finish a book by showing up every day and just writing a little bit, and then you edit it and refine it and you get where you want to go. But to me, that is an act of discipline also, because what you're doing is sort of going, well, here's the level I would be thinking about, here's what I would be doing, but by sort of outthinking or thinking around it, I'm able to come up with. I'll give you an example. I think also flossing is gross. It sucks. It's a habit that's hard to start, especially when you got to get the little box and pull out the thing and wrap it around your fingers and go like this. And then it's like somebody invents the little sticks, or they invent, and then all of a sudden they've taken a thing that was difficult and they make it 40% easier. and now the discipline required to do it's like work smarter, not harder, right?
Yeah,
and I
sure.
think that deciding to work smarter, the work that you did, knowing it's like knowing myself, if this is just sheer physical training, I'm not going to have fun, I'm not going to do it, I'm going to be miserable. And so you did a considerable amount of mental work to think around that, to then just get yourself to a place where you are doing the training necessary to do the thing that you want to do.
Yeah. Let's look at the word discipline.
Okay.
And because I think you're leading to an area where we probably agree.
Probably. I think this is interesting. Yes.
So when you are practicing discipline, you are becoming a disciple of something. You're following something or somebody.
Yeah.
So in that respect, what I was doing was following my soul.
Yeah.
Now, my soul had to have a kind of voice.
Yeah.
So what I employed there...
Changed the voice.
Changed the voice, yes. Yeah. Now, what I changed it to is something very specific. Yeah. So we're going to flash back again now to ancient soldiers going into battle. Back in ancient Greece, soldiers would begin praying to the god of healing on Olympics, Paean, who, in order to protect them.
Yeah.
So you imagine these soldiers running into battle saying, please, Paean, don't let me be the one who gets speared.
Yeah.
So, but pretty soon, or maybe right away, we don't know, they were shouting these prayers in a highly rhythmic way, which they thought was magical.
Yeah.
Which is, our charms come from this idea of song, of singing something. So Cicero wrote about this, saying the Paean actually was a group of short and long syllables. Now, in ancient Greek, it's really difficult to translate this into anything sensible, but it's pretty clear. He was using terms like a Paean would be something like golden-haired far shooter, son of Zeus. And you imagine someone shouting that, it actually, and there is some neuroscience behind this, not a lot, which shows that kind of rhythm is not only remembered more, but it actually creates cognitive ease, where you believe it more. So I started using Paeans on myself. Yeah. In fact, I do it when I write all the time. I do a Paean with the same rhythm. I'm a brilliant writer.
Like a mantra.
Yeah. It's like a mantra, only with a very specific word. I say, I'm a brilliant writer. Everybody loves me, which is, and the things you're smiling. I did too. Yeah. The stupider, it makes a great experiment. The dumber the Paean, and the more you repeat it, it's not just the repetition. I swear it's the rhythm. And you can see Madison Avenue's picked up on this. Bet you can't eat just one is a Paean.
Yeah.
And a lot of, if you go back and you look at the slogans, which, by the way, Paeans became, the war chant started out as a prayer to Paean and became a slogan, where we're going to kill you right away, whatever they were shouting.
Yes.
That became a kind of implanted belief through rhythm and memory that actually changes your ventromedial prefrontal cortex, which is what has to do with interpreting your reality. And so you begin to see yourself differently and the things around you differently. Now, this is not so much discipline. This is pure manipulation.
Yeah, I guess. I think we agree. I mean, at some point you have to do the thing. You do the persuasion, but what are you persuading yourself to do? What is the persuasion towards? It's persuading yourself to do a thing, and then you have to do it, and that's where the sort of willpower comes in. I think what you're getting at, and maybe sometimes the Stoics didn't do enough, or people miss, is like we only have so much willpower, and however you can reduce the amount of willpower required to do a thing. Again, this is the sort of work beforehand, or, it's like the Abraham Lincoln thing about you got to chop down a tree, you should spend most of the time sharpening the axe.
Yes.
But you go, hey, if this is just raw brute force willpower, you better hope you have a lot of it. And I would say, like, as I've gotten older, I've had to get smarter about these things because, it's like on my first book, before I had kids, before I was married, I could just go, I sit in my chair and this is what I do all day. And, as kids and life takes up more and more, you got to be, I got 1 hour to be in the zone. And so what are the strategies that you use to get in that zone? It can't just be that kind of brute force.
That's true. I will say, and you push back on this. Yeah. I'm sure you will. One of the ways I define Stoicism, modern Stoicism, is looking at Stoics.
Yeah.
And the people who are really into Stoicism, who really understand it and seem to practice it, I get a sense they were pretty strong, self-disciplined people to start with.
Yeah,
they're awesome people.
Sure.
And so I like to write for someone like me, a weakling, a nerd, who maybe just loves words so much and would rather be doing that than any kind of painful exercise. And so the idea that you need to be able to push through things and you need to persevere and you need to do the right thing and do things for others, all of that kind of sucks. I mean, it's much better. I write in my book, this only sounds like a digression.
Yeah.
Maybe it is. When I was in college, I edited the newspaper, I think, because nobody else wanted to.
Yeah. I was an editor for my college newspaper, too.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a fun job, by the way. It
was. Yeah. It's my first. I had an office. Like
I did, too.
It's like all of a sudden you're like punching way above your weight because this is all funded by the university. You feel like you're getting to sort of pretend to be this thing that it's going to take a long time to earn your second office.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's kind of a come down when you graduate.
Yeah.
Well, so because I was the editor, there was this guy, this person who had been invited to the college on a tour. This was back in 1975, I think, a long time ago. So I was invited to meet this guy for breakfast called the Dalai Lama, and I had no clue who he was.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, he wasn't that well known. I mean, I should have known. It was sheer ignorance on my part. My news editor, much smarter than I was.
Who was this?
Middlebury College in Vermont.
Yeah.
Small liberal arts school. But also a very internationally oriented school. I think that's why he was there. But it was also a Rockefeller, who is a professor of religion, who I think has some influence, who invited him. So it's going to be Professor Rockefeller, the Dalai Lama, an interpreter, and me.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to go because it was early. I was in college. I wanted to sleep in. My news editor saw this invitation and said, no. This guy's, the Dalai Lama is a real guy. And, he's even maybe worshipped. I think he's kind of a god.
Sure.
So I wanted to see what a god eats for breakfast. That's what drove me to go. No discipline on my part. And the thing is, I was really unimpressed.
Yeah.
It was years before I really realized what was going on there. I mean, the guy was just this guy in a robe with nerdy glasses that were unfashionable even back then. I don't think he ate anything.
Yeah.
And he laughed the whole time.
Yeah.
He was just giggling all the time. I thought, this is the most unserious person I've ever met. Like, this is a VIP?
Yeah.
Like, this guy who's supposed to be the wisest man in the world or something? Why would you worship a guy like that? Which I thought, of course, he's not a god exactly. Anyway, years later, I'm in Washington, D.C. in a real job.
Yeah.
And somebody said, hey, the Dalai Lama is coming to Washington. Without thinking, I said, yeah, I had breakfast with him. And, of course, crickets. I mean, everybody, the conversation stops. Everybody turns to me like, what?
Yeah.
And I realized I had nothing to say about the guy. Now, the reason I brought this up was he practicing a discipline? Probably, right?
Sure.
An intense one. And yet it wasn't, you've gotten the sense all his life. This guy is the leader of a banished state.
Yes.
Right. He had to be smuggled out of Tibet by the CIA.
Yeah.
This guy is a world leader. Must be a disciplined guy.
Yeah.
Never mind the whole Buddhism part.
Yeah.
Or is it Taoism? Anyway, yet he gives no appearance of that. It's a sheer joy. Now, we do know that the Epicureans and the Buddhists had a lot of conversations together. The two clearly very much influenced each other. And the thing is about Epicureanism, as you point out, you prepare yourself to the life you want to live.
Yeah.
It's in order maybe even to prevent not just suffering, but trying too hard. And I got the sense that the Dalai Lama, I mean, just sitting with me, probably didn't have to try at all.
Well, the height of most things is a kind of effortlessness and an ease, right? And there's probably something there too. Although one of the lessons I'm taking from your story is we hold these people up as these sort of magnificent holy figures, and then it's like, what kind of VIP is he if he's having lunch with this or breakfast with this kid at Middlebury College, right? Like, there's something you kind of, and Mark Schwartz does this in Meditations, where he kind of just tries to take things down a peg, and he goes like, you think this person's so important or whatever, and then you go like, what do they have to do? What's their actual day? And then you go, oh yeah, the president's calling into Fox and Friends, like and you go, oh, it's at some level, it's all the same bullshit that is life, and that although we can hold things up and sort of venerate them, there's no real escaping just the fundamental indignities of being a person.
That's true. What's the expression? No man is a hero to his valet.
Yeah, like he was. They were like, "What are you doing today?" He's like, "I gotta go have breakfast with this kid." Like he, I don't know why. You can
imagine him giggling while he said it, though. Yeah. That's like, he had clearly has achieved ataraxia.
Yes,
as the Epicureans call it.
Of course,
which is this idea of overcoming all the fears.
Yeah.
Of life. And getting to that kind of even keel.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that does take a certain relationship with your soul,
the work of a life,
work. I'm sure it does take a certain amount of work. My mission is to make sure I do as little work as possible, at building up these sort of easy habits that lead to more. And they've done wonders for me, by the way. I still can run.
Yeah.
And I'm happier now than I not only was before, but I think than I've ever been, in part because I keep saying these stupid paeans to myself, and I have a set of habits where I now work out an hour and a half to 2 hours a day, and it feels like super fun stuff. I learn all the time, which is fun for me, and I listen to audiobooks like yours.
Well, it is interesting, when you watch like a really great athlete, maybe even like in something wrestling or jiu-jitsu, you think they're just really, and actually, the better you get at it, the less strain and stress there is. It's something much more fluid and effortless, because not just where everything goes, but you've also realized what is the minimum effort, what's the minimum effective dose here. So you're not having to do any more than you need to do, because you can't. I think especially as you get older, you realize, hey, I can't spare the excess, right? Like, and so you just get to a place where it's kind of all perfectly balanced. Like when you're young, or if you're just genetically gifted, maybe you get by on this kind of brute strength, or on sort of doing it inefficiently. But as you get older, it's all about reducing drag, and I think about this not just physically, like I'm realizing like, hey, I've got to like follow less stuff, have less opinions about things, be more focused on my stuff, because my stuff has gotten harder. I've also gotten, like I'm just exhausted. So it's like you gotta winnow your focus down. The Stoics talk about this idea of a smooth flow of life. And like one of my favorite quotes I've been thinking about a lot recently from Epictetus, he's saying like, how do I know that you're making progress in this philosophy? He says, you're having fewer arguments. Like if you're going through life just arguing with people, disagreeing with people, getting in, spats or fights, you apparently have excess energy, right? And good for you, but I can't imagine that lasts. And so I think part of it is this kind of just efficiency that you get into.
Yeah, that's such a great way of putting it. There's another concept that's related to this, back to J-Light savings.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking, the Tour de France just concluded this past Sunday, and Tadej Pogačar, probably the greatest cyclist in history, just won for the fourth time. If you look at Tadej Pogačar, that's a great example. His trainers literally have to hold him back because he just wants to attack with such delight. He's always got a smile on his face, and that is one painful sport. I could say
it's like the worst sport.
It is a worse sport. You're climbing mountains with a stupid bike and then going down them at 50 miles an hour. All that being said, the Greeks had this idea during chariot races. The really smart Greek was the one who holds back and looks for the opening.
Yes.
And so that's this sense of kairos, which they actually had a god for. Yeah. Which is this idea of opportunity. Yeah. And, crisis can create that kind of opportunity. You've written about that, but not necessarily from a kairotic standpoint.
Well, so I did it's interesting, my book on discipline. So I did this series on the cardinal virtues: so courage, discipline, justice, wisdom, discipline also sometimes rendered as temperance. But the other word they had for it is sophrosyne. And the image for sophrosyne was often a chariot racer. And the idea of, it's not just whipping the horses to make them go faster, but also reining them in, right? And you think about running one of these rickety chariots. You've got 2 or 3 or 4 horses on them. It's much more an art than it is strength, and that sort of, again, we tend to think of discipline as pushing and faster and more and relentlessness, but actually, it's about, not just looking for the opening, but so I just ran a marathon and I did it in Greece. I did the original marathon. But I came out of the gate, when I look back at it, what I did, I was so excited when I started that my first 4 miles were just a smidge faster than they needed to be, and I really paid for it on the back half. And so again, you think that discipline is you go out and then you just if that's too fast, then you got to find gas somewhere. But that's not what it is, right? It's really about, I think discipline is so often, or all these sophrosyne, is mostly about the restraint, the sort of keeping it within the bounds that you need towards some idea of kind of being able to sustain the performance that you are trying to perform at.
Yeah, I had the same problem in my first marathon. There is a governor, which has to do with discipline. You are following something in that kind of governor. And Aristotle called that governor 2 things: the soul, which is not necessarily, this is where I find it a lot easier to think of my soul as something that me, but somehow separate from me. Yeah. So it allows a certain forgiveness factor when I don't follow as well, because then I can promise that I'll do better to this, superior soul, which can be so annoying sometimes. But also at the same time, this idea of governor, the other concept is mediocrity, the golden mean. Yes. And, which in America is anathema. Yeah. Why would you do that? You take something for your headache and it says extreme, whatever. Which the Greeks would have appalled at. Yes, that would sound like poison.
Follow your passion, find your passion. Again, it is interesting how we've sometimes flipped some of this ancient wisdom on its head. We do the exact opposite of what the really smart people told us to do.
Which can lead us to bad things.
Totally.
Far away from ataraxia or apatheia.
Yes. No, I think ataraxia is a better word. I think apatheia, the problem with it is it's sort of the root word of apathy, which has this negative connotation. I think they're the same word. You know what I mean? It's about a kind of freedom from disturbance. It's the smooth flow of life. It's getting to a place where it doesn't matter what's happening in the outside world. It doesn't matter if you're doing something hard or not doing something hard. You're at that kind of even keel. You have command of yourself.
Yeah, there is, I think, a slight difference, and I may be wrong about this, but I like to think that the Epicureans allowed some passions that they would have super fun with. Yeah. And one of them was thaumaston, this idea of this sense of wonder and joy at something. I write in my book about Double Rainbow Guy. Yeah. Do you remember him? Yeah, there's so many memes for that guy. Yeah. He was looking at this double rainbow and he was feeling such over the top joy. It was hilarious. Yes. And yet he was experiencing something that the Epicureans wrote about, that you need to be open to this. I mean, Montaigne came up with this term that I translated as liberality, this openness to that kind of joy, which can be completely over the top. I mean, there are drugs for that now. But I actually had that experience when I climbed Rainier. We did a really hard route because I was with people who had been former guides on the mountain. And up there, your ego kind of vanishes the way some psychedelic drugs will do for you. The same thing happened when I reached the top of Mount Musalak. I felt such joy that I didn't even look at my watch when I first came. I mean, hit the watch to get the time, but I didn't look at it.
It didn't get recorded on the watch. Did you even do it? No, like I'm same thing. I'm like sometimes my watch will die and I'll be like, what was the point of the exercise that I just did?
Yes.
I didn't get to record it in this magical app that I'll never check.
Well, this was a while ago. So it was a Timex Ironman. So it wasn't an app. You hit
even you're tracking your time. Like the winning was doing it, and then here you are going like, well, I got to make sure I get the exact time that I have this.
Yeah. So the moment I hit it, I hit the button. And I didn't look. I felt I didn't need to because I was just felt this overwhelming sense of joy and gratitude. It was just this marvelous feeling. And it's one that actually neurologists say that feeling, if you do it right, some people call it the zone, you know, it lasts. It can last. Now, I'll tell you, it took me a while to figure out how to write this book. Because how do I write a self-help book when I didn't want to write one? And how do I not discipline myself? So it took me 10 years to figure out how to do this thing. So this happened when I turned 58 and I'm about to turn 70. It was that long ago. And yet that feeling, I still have it.
It is unfair to the Epicureans because we take them at their word that sort of pleasure is important. That's the what we're in pursuit of, and we forget how they actually defined pleasure. It was pleasure. It's like you're talking about. I was taking my dog for a walk night before last. Sun setting. I'm listening to music. I'm watching the sun come down. I live in this dirt road, and I'm eating a plum cot. Have you ever had a plum cot? It's a combination between a plum and an apricot, some new fruit I'd never heard of. And I'm like, this is the fucking best. This is this is amazing. This is like it was overwhelming how amazing it was. And it's like I'm eating a piece of fruit going for a walk. This isn't, I'm not taking drugs. I haven't just sold a company for $1 billion. I haven't just won an Olympic medal. I'm not in an orgy. It's not a sensual, overwhelming pleasure, but it's that like we have this letter from Epicurus where he's like waxing rhapsodically about this like pot of cheese that a friend sent him. Like the pleasures that Epicurus was talking about were relatively minor, and it was this ability, sort of like a poet or like someone who knows how to express gratitude, or maybe has just had a second chance at life, is appreciating this small thing. And then the way I thought of Epicurus after, as I got back to the house, we had like a little box of them. I was like, I'm not going to eat another one. So when you eat too much fruit and
that's
you're just
discipline.
Like, but like you
right.
you eat a peach and it's good, and then you eat a second peach and you're like, oh, now my stomach hurts. I was like, I'm going to take the fact that I enjoyed this thing and it was delicious, and then maybe I'll have another one tomorrow. And that too, we don't give Epicurus credit. His point was, if you drink to the point of having a hangover, you have to include the hangover in your equation of whether that was a pleasurable experience or not.
Yes, that's a very, very kairotic point.
Yes.
This idea that you have to think about the timing of things, which is having a different idea of time. It's not something that just evolves naturally, but you have some control over. But let me ask you, why did you feel that way? I mean, someone else eating that fruit, walking the dog, sunset, pretty quotidian kind of moment here. Why did you feel that way? What do you think led to it?
Well, I think philosophically, this is something you cultivate. And I think you see this in meditations. Marcus Aurelius has these beautiful observations. Not, he's not on the top of Mount Olympus looking down, which maybe he saw, or he's not on the Acropolis looking at, this one of the highest achievements in sort of architecture and engineering. He's like, look at the way this stalk of grain is bending low under its weight, right? It's ripe. Or he's talking about looking at this olive that I'm picking. He makes these sort of observations about these ordinary things, but he's doing it like a poet. Like a poet cultivates the ability to see beauty in seemingly mundane things. And I think philosophy does this too. And it might have been Aristotle. One of them says, both the poet and the philosopher are concerned with wonder. Mm-hmm. Like it starts with it's the ability to see this thing in a way that maybe a person who's not trained or is trained to take it for granted is not going to see. So I think obviously the fruit I'm eating is great. The sunset is beautiful. But it's the decision and the cultivation of the ability to sort of really put it all together and then to sort of feel that feeling. To me, that's the art of it. Because if you're distracted, if you're busy, if you're ruminating on something that happened earlier, or you are obsessing anxiously over something that might happen in the future, what you're doing is making that sort of ordinary / extraordinary moment impossible. And so I do think that is a skill. It's a discipline to be able to experience those sort of moments and to note them and then to savor them, not just while you're experiencing them, but in a journal, in a book, in a work of art. That's to me the whole game. That's
interesting. So in a sense, both wonder and suffering have a certain agency to them.
Yes.
Like you had a dog in that hunt, literally.
Yeah. Well, Epictetus is like every situation has two handles, and you choose which one you're going to grab. Yeah. And so you can go, hey, the world is falling apart. We have a madman in the White House. The economy looks uncertain. My marriage is struggling. You could ruminate on all these existential or self-indulgent things, or you could be like, all is well in the world. I'm on a dirt road eating a fruit, walking my dog. This is life. Life is good. And I try to do that, writing, we were talking about writing is painful. Finishing books is usually great. Like having a book is awesome, but the process of doing it can suck. But I talked to a number of professional athletes, and all of them talked about how much they sort of missed playing and how they wished they'd enjoyed playing more while they were doing it. They were so competitive that all they were thinking about is games that they didn't. And so I decided several years ago to be like, hey, I get to do what I love. This is a dream. I'm going to try to think about that on a regular basis and not indulge in this kind of pity party or how easy it can be to complain or be made miserable by this thing that, by the way, I'm choosing to do, and I don't have to do. If I really hate it this much, I should do something else. And so I do feel like I actively practice deciding which handle I'm going to grab, different experiences by.
I love hearing that. I mean, You've achieved a level of wisdom that I took a lot longer and maybe still haven't achieved.
Well, thank you. I get it in fleeting moments.
Well, that was a great moment. I don't know why this reminds me, but you could tell me why it does. Yeah. Some years ago, a magazine assigned me a piece about the origins of democracy. How much fun is that?
Yeah.
So I went to Syracuse, New York for the Seneca Confederation. Seneca.
Yeah, Seneca Falls.
The Iroquois Confederation.
Oh, got it.
It was, Syracuse. But the London and to Rome and Athens. And in Athens...
They don't assign many pieces like that anymore. Multiple flights for a magazine piece.
No, and obviously it was a triumphant expense accounting.
Yes.
So, and super fun. Yeah. So I found myself in Athens, and I was actually looking for the Nyx, the PNYX Nyx, the original speakers platform where Demosthenes himself had spoken, down to the hoi polloi, 3,000 people sitting on benches, not always politely. And what's interesting? I was there in the evening. Have you been there? Mm-hmm. So if you get up on the platform itself, and this was some years ago, so there was no fencing, there was no signage. Yeah. It took me forever to find the thing. So there is the Acropolis, the sacred temple to Athena. Yeah. Down below was the agora, the marketplace, sacred, profane.
Yep.
And so I get up there. I am standing where Demosthenes
Yeah.
had stood in this carved out rock. And so, of course, being a good American, I began reciting the Gettysburg Address. And it was such a glorious moment, but I wasn't feeling that wonder exactly. I was thinking, this is amazing.
Yeah.
This is so great for my story. You know, I was thinking the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Then I noticed, and no one was there.
Yeah.
Then I noticed a woman, a middle-aged woman, walking her dog down below. And she looks up and she gives the most European gesture that American can give. It's like this shrug.
Yes.
And it's like, I must have been like the 50. She lived nearby.
Yes.
She must have heard 50 Americans reciting the Gettysburg Address up on the Knicks. That's when I felt the absolute joy.
Yeah.
Because I thought
it had become background noise or ordinary to her, and to you, there was still something sacred and special and magical about it.
And it reduced it also,
eyes.
yes, but also to something that was funny, and
Yes.
it gets me back to the Dalai Lama.
Sure.
I was giggling up there on that platform, and it made everything better. It suddenly the glow of the sunset got better.
Yeah.
Explain that to me. Why do you think that was?
I think it's it's your being sort of fully present, and you're locked in a way. Yeah, there is something that can be troubling as a writer, because you're both hyper observant and aware of what's happening, but then there's this sort of, how am I going to use this lens that's actually taking you out of the moment a little bit,
right?
And to just go, hey, I'm just going to experience this thing.
Yeah, I think you're right. It took me away from the meta.
Yeah.
This idea that there was a story in the back of my head that I was trying to put together while I was doing it.
Yes, yeah. It's like you have the back part of your brain, these sort of gears are turning and clicking, going like, here's how I'm going to turn this into a thing. And what you're not doing is experiencing the thing. I think for people who can't relate to this is like ordinary. It's like when you're at a concert and you're like, oh, I got to film this part, or you're seeing fireworks and you're never going to use this. What are you doing? Just be there for the thing.
Right, there's that expression. What is it? If you did get a picture, it didn't happen.
Yes.
Yeah, which is so anathema to the very idea of being present.
Totally. Yeah. Can you just be there for the moment? And I do think philosophically that's what they were all working on. And I got to imagine that lady's experience. I mean, when you see the Acropolis or you see some of these things for the first time, it's magnificent. I assume even Socrates and Aristotle and Plato were like, oh yeah, I didn't notice that. Like it probably bled into the background for them. I was just in Greece, and we were walking up the Sacred Way to the Temple of Apollo where the Oracle was, and it hit me like, what must have and this is incredible now as ruins. What must it have been like when this was not just white marble, but everything was gleaming and gold, and the sun must have been hitting it, and you weren't jaded thinking like, oh, I've seen a 150-story building. Like, this would have been literally the apex of civilization's artistic, architectural, logistical capacity, just right here. And you would have believed it was, they thought there's literally the center of the universe, the navel there. And so it would have been just a profoundly overwhelming experience. I think about this, when you go to Europe and you stand in one of these cathedrals, you go, oh, this is amazing. But I try to go like, what did this feel like to a peasant in the 14th century? Like, who had never been more than 100 miles from this exact spot. Like, it must have been existentially, spiritually, emotionally overwhelming in every conceivable way.
Well, so a lot of brilliant rhetoricians through the centuries, including up through the 20th century, wrote about magic, the rhetoric of magic. So you have your visual rhetoric, which you just described, but also, obviously the vocal rhetoric as well. And you, this combination of sensual circumstances, but also the actual language that was used while they were walking up the sacred way. They were chanting things rhythmically.
Right.
And it was magical stuff that actually caused the gods to pay attention, that would transform people's, spiritual behavior and how their minds were working. There's so much great neuroscience now going on to try to figure out what were the charms and how were they expressed.
Yeah.
And, that leads back to what I was trying to do with myself in a really amateurish way.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, even when I was trying to think in terms of charms as magic, and this idea that if I could make my soul be charming to myself, which Aristotle, spent a lot of time describing as the ideal ethos is actually magical.
Yeah.
Like you can become almost what a god does to have its charming effect on you, glamoring you, as the vampires would say.
Well, speaking of magic, I think music is magic. Like you think about as a writer, the work you have to do could be a culmination of decades of your ability to do it. And then you listen to some song written by some 22-year-olds, and the first 3 notes contain more power and emotion than you will ever muster. Like just there's something magical about music. And so I thought, obviously Taylor Swift is in the cover here. Where do you think music comes in as far as self-persuasion?
Well, it's funny you mention that because, if you then go back, you take your favorite songs, which are so beautiful and so much meaning in them, then you read the lyrics.
Yeah.
They can be so utterly lame.
Yeah.
Taylor Swift I find really interesting because I actually used her as an exemplary soul, or a person who's really in touch with her soul. Taylor Swift from the get-go was, by the way, I have to name drop here. We already did. But I was the first editor ever to put her on the cover of a magazine.
Really?
And when I tell
magazine?
It was the Southwest Airlines magazine. And, I had a wrangler who, and I said, look, a lot of our people love country music. Go find a country music star that will be the next star. And this brilliant wrangler said, here's a 17-year-old. Wow. We need her mother's permission. So we put Taylor in the car. And of course, that meant nothing. She has no idea who I am. And yet, I'll tell you what, nothing I have done in life will magically charm a 16-year-old as much as my name dropping Taylor Swift. Now, that being said, what I think is great, there was a moment in her life that I think every Stoic would truly understand when, I can't do names, who's the rap star who...
Kanye West.
Kanye West at the VMAs.
Yes.
Got up, I'm going to let you finish, and then just grabbed the stage. She was crushed by that. Yeah. She was still a teenager.
Right.
It really set her back. And yet there was this kind of determination that behind us. And she herself put that in some of her lyrics, in her songs later. So what she was doing was practicing the magical charm of being herself, of expressing her soul in such a way that they seemed like they were one. And Aristotle called that charisma, which comes from the same Greek as, charm, karma, or from song. It all is deeply related. So this magic of expression, how you express yourself through the rhythm or music, and she did it all. There are foreign powers that are begging her to come to improve their economies by giving a concert.
No, it's crazy. I tell the story in the updated edition of The Obstacles Away when she finds out her masters are being sold. And she really can't afford to buy them, or she doesn't want to buy them, whatever. She found this to be an injustice, and you can, obviously some people have parsed it and they feel like it's a bit self-indulgent. But the point is, she felt like she was getting screwed over by the music industry, and it changed her relationship with her own back catalog. And the decision to go, hey, all right, I'm just going to re-record my back catalog, and I'm going to update the music, and I'm going to do new art, and I'm going to make it this thing. She was already one of, if not the biggest pop star in the world, and she's become bigger than we conceived of a musician being able to be because of this thing. It all stems from the decision to re-record the music, because what happens is, for basically 2 or 3 consecutive years, all her old stuff is coming back out. It's being rediscovered by the existing fans. It's being discovered for the first time by new fans. The Eras Tour is a tour that makes sense because you can see now there are these different eras of the music, and it becomes the biggest grossing tour of all time. It becomes, all the albums become some of the biggest albums of all time. That doesn't, when you want to talk about the obstacle being the way, that doesn't happen if this seemingly bad thing doesn't happen first. And then the choice to respond, like the Stoics say, we don't control what happens, we control how we respond to what happens. She decided to do this thing. No one said you have to do this. She would have been financially, musically, artistically totally fine. She would have been in the boat of most artists who don't own their catalog if she just said, this sucks, I don't like it. I mean, she could have spent the next couple years just complaining about it in interviews. Like or she could have said, you know what, I've made enough money, I'm done, right? She could have taken the ball and went home. There's all these different ways that you could respond. And the way she does respond, I think it's not just this sort of public relations jujitsu. It's not just this marketing genius. It's not just creatively interesting. But I also think she uses it, to go to your point about self-persuasion. She decides to interpret it as this sort of motivating thing in the way that Michael Jordan would perceive slights and use them to motivate himself. I'm gonna humiliate this person because of what they did to me. And it becomes this thing that just catapults her to a totally different level. I think when we say the obstacle is the way, it's about responding to the things that life deals you that way.
I would go one better on that. I mean, all that is really true and so well said. She saw herself getting away from herself. So she literally resumed ownership of Taylor Swift. What is Taylor Swift but her music? Yeah. She went to own it, and that's owning herself. She had such a great relationship. Aristotle would say she bought her soul back. Yeah. That she got in close touch, expressing this deep sense of obligation, the philos that you have for someone else. Yeah. And that being her own soul. And that's why I thought she was the greatest exemplar of the Aristotelian soul I could come up with.
Well, and then the irony is she makes so much money that she then does buy back. She just bought back all the rights to the original catalog, like a few months ago. And so now she owns the new catalog and the old catalog. And
she went down to Hades and found her shades and brought them back.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's lovely, and that's what I think. Being an artist is a metaphor in the sense that shit happens to you, both professionally and personally, and your job is to turn that into more work. Right? It's to let it change and inform who you are as a person, positively and negatively, and then to channel that into the creative work. Like one of my mentors, Robert Greene, the writer, he said, the good news about the path you've chosen, deciding to be a writer, he said, it's all material. He's like, from this point forward, everything that happens to you is material. And, I think about that all the time. I have shitty conversations, stuff happens, and I go, okay, like I just lost a bunch of money in this investment. So that sucks. I'm going to learn a lesson from that. But also, I make the money back in the book I write out of it, and this is both literally and figuratively true. How do you use the things that happen to you?
Oh, that's so great.
That's the job.
It reminds me of when my wife went into labor. We were living in a suburb of Washington, D.C., in Bethesda. And so and she was giving birth at a hospital that had no parking. So we were going to take the metro. What could go wrong? The metro stops between stations while she's in labor, and then the power goes out.
Okay.
Now, before the power goes out, she had looked around, as she always does. She's in much better soul, in touch with her soul than I will ever be. She had noticed that there's a bunch of Mennonite girls in this thing. She says two things to me. First, she says, well, I bet those Mennonites would know what to do in case this baby starts coming out between stations. I'm like trying to control my emotions here. Sure. The second thing she said is, and think of the story you're going to write.
Yeah.
And isn't it great to be a writer, because you get to do that.
Right. And so again, I think this is a metaphor. You go, something happens, right? You run a company, and then this thing happens, and the company starts to fall apart, and you get screwed, and you got to be able to say to yourself, this is making me a better leader, executive, human being, whatever. In some way, this is preparing me for a future thing that I'm going to use. I'm going to use this in some way.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it's about.
Yeah. That's where the agency is, right?
Yes.
Well, that gets me into storytelling, because not all of us are storytellers.
Yes.
I am so grateful to get to be one.
Yeah.
But even somebody who doesn't, if you see your life as a kind of plot that hasn't ended,
Yeah.
You can kind of see, if you like, in my book I talk about the beat system of screenwriting, which apparently screenwriters don't use, but it's great to think about how to tell a story. There are action beats and things that take place, as Aristotle said, every story has 3 acts. So when you see yourself that way, you can see that there's a kind of progress where bad things have to happen for a decent movie to come about. And then if you're rooting for the hero and you hope for a happy ending, that's you, and you have some agency in how to write that part of your life. I think of the investments I failed to make. I would be so rich today, like many people. Yeah. I remember the year after college, a friend of mine was staying with her in Burlington, Vermont, and she said, "There's this great ice cream." It was midwinter. You know where I'm coming from. And it was out of this gas station. These 2 rude, not entirely clean guys were like, there's a long line, in fact, because they're so bad at serving ice cream. The ice cream, by the way, was great. But as we're leaving, I said to my friend Diane, you know what? Service is everything. These guys will be out of business within a year. Of course, that was Ben and Jerry. Some years later, I was in a new job, and they were still using word processors at a time when the IBM PC was king. And I said, we need to buy computers. We have no budget for it. What should we do? And my business manager said, there's this grad student in Austin, Texas, where we're speaking. And we were the first bulk purchase from Michael Dell.
Wow. And
the reason he did is he had this brilliant idea of contacting repair shops around the country to assure people that the computer would be fixed, which it never needed. But that was what allowed us to buy something other than the IBM PC at like 1/3 of the price. My business manager, came back to me and he said, this guy, Michael Dell, is looking for investors at the $10,000 level. And I'm like, I don't have $10,000. You crazy? Some grad student at the University of Texas. Lee did that. Wow. I retired early, lives in this beautiful place in Vermont now. And of course, I didn't do that. Now, that's part of my story. Like, I am not an investor. I tell stories about how I failed to invest and what I learned from doing that. And do I regret it? If I had been the kind of person who would jump on the chance to give a grad student $10,000, think about how many $10,000 I would have blown, right? I would have invested in crypto at exactly the wrong time. So, I mean, all of this is part of my story. Where does that lead to in the end? I die happy. My children will have very little money.
That's amazing. You want to go check out some books in the bookstore?
I'd love to.
All right.